Welcome to the Carbon Circle podcast by Carbon Mandal. I'm Roshan Rai, founder of Carbon Mandal, where we help businesses turn sustainability from aspiration into measurable impact. In today's episode, we are exploring a shift that quietly is reshaping how companies think about sustainability, where environmental responsibility is no longer just about compliance, but about long term business value. I'm joined by Vinod Raghavan, a seasoned business leader with over 2 decades of experience and is currently heading netZERO services at Resustainability. Vinod works at the intersection of waste management, circular economy, and carbon markets, helping organizations turn environmental challenges into measurable climate outcomes. In this conversation, we break down carbon credits in simple terms, discuss how circular economy works in practice, and explore what it really takes to build credible climate solutions in India. If you are a business leader, sustainability professional, or simply curious about how climate action connects with real world economics, this episode is for you. Let's dive in. Hello and welcome to yet another podcast from the Carbon Circle. So today we have a topic which is building India's carbon credit ecosystem from waste management to climate finance. And today with us we have Vinod Raghavan, head of netZERO Services Private Limited, Resustainability company. And in today's topic, we are going to cover four broad subtopics. The first topic that we'll cover today is the strategic imperative, why environmental responsibility is now a business asset. That's topic number one. The topic number two that we'll cover for this podcast is the carbon credits, the one of the highly spoken topic in today's date and time. So carbon credits as a currency and decoding the emerging market here in India and elsewhere. The third topic that we'll cover today is the circular economy as a bridge from theory to action. What is circular economy? We'll start with the very foundation and move forward from there. The fourth topic today that we intend to cover is building an ecosystem together, because collaboration is key for us to be able to build a sustainable Bharat. So with that, let me start with the first question for this podcast today. So Vinod, before we deep dive into this conversation, could you walk our listeners through your 26 years journey from your early days at Tata's and Reliance through building the presently netZERO? And what experiences shaped your understanding that environmental responsibility could become a strategic business asset, and what makes you uniquely positioned to lead this charge in India's carbon ecosystem today?
Hey, hi. Thanks, Roshan, for having me here. And it's wonderful. So this is I think collectively we are coming together to add value to the ecosystem that is Mother
Absolutely.
Earth. That's the first thing which we can do as an individual.
Yeah.
And if you look at my journey has been as an individual, I've been at a million settled across, I've lived across 13, 14 cities
Uh-huh.
and worked across multiple organizations. But I have been part of large enterprises, as you mentioned, with Tata's, Bharti's, and all those kind of worlds. But that is one way of journey in terms of working with governments, working with enterprises, and all those areas. But relatively, if you look at something struck me around, I think 7 to 8 years back,
Mm-hmm.
and where I was actually doing a rethinking, what should we do? So there are 3 R's what we talk about in terms of recycle, reuse, or relatively get it back to the society.
Yeah.
So I was just thinking on an individual note, how do I start looking back and give back to the nature, Mother Earth as such? And that's how I got it my sustainability journey in. And that's how I've been enjoying this journey. And just to start, last 8 years, it has been different mediums of operations. So there I've been working with the government ecosystem. I've been working into the platform-based companies. I've been working with the so-called sustainability jargons and words as such, advisory organizations. But I think last relatively 6, 7 years back, we did a transition at a ground level.
Mm-hmm.
So people talk it as kachra is like gold. So that
Right.
is one way of looking at things. But relatively, a lot of good things are happening in the industry, in the organization, within India, globally, on this real sustainability actions in place. And we would call it as sustainability delivered. And
Mm.
relatively, when I got this opportunity to be a part of these organizations as netZERO, netZERO is everybody is using that common words, but holding a brand name of netZERO and actually creating that impact at ground level is totally different. So
Right.
keeping that in view, Roshan, I think my journey is really day in, day out. My day starts in at 7 a.m. and it's at 11 p.m. and again it further continues. But every
11 to
moment,
11.
yeah, very much. And every moment and every second, I think we are enjoying the journey.
Yeah.
And real, I'm able to see contribute to the society. First of all, it started with my family, to be precise.
Mm-hmm.
And in terms of my family, when you start at home, so
Yeah.
sustainability starts at home.
Yeah.
So we started doing small contributions. In fact, when my son was quite young at that point of time, during this sustainability journey in the school, it is a very progressive school. He was been working around over there, and they were talking in terms of best sustainable practices. So
Mm.
it is a huge learning platform for the parents actually. So
For
kids,
sure.
anyhow, they do the learning, but relatively the learning came ahead with me, and that actually stuck me. Real sustainability starts at home. So it's like charity starts at home. So
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
is the same way. And NetZERO as an organization, I think it is an extended arm of Ramki, the so-called established name. No, most of people don't know, Roshan, that as an organization, Ramki Sustainability has been there over the last 30 years. And they work with a huge fleet at ground level with around 5,000 odd fleets, which are Bharat Benz motors and all these vehicles which we use for vehicle in terms of waste management. There
Mm.
are 24,000 employees. There are white collar, blue collar employees who are doing real groundwork and cleaning the societies, cleaning the industrial, hazardous waste, all those areas. And relatively, we have been able to deliver sustainability at ground level. We right now work with 108 facilities across the globe. We are also omnipresent across the globe. I would say that we are present at US, we are present at Singapore, we are present at UAE, of course, Thailand, Vietnam, Malaysia, across 14 countries. And India, I think relatively we manage 60 to 65% of waste.
Wow.
And as an organization leading NetZERO as an initiative, I think a lot of good work is happening at ground level. So we are doing getting the so-called the digital and the physical both strings together
Yeah.
and doing sustainability delivered at ground level.
Amazing,
So
amazing. I mean, it is really fascinating for me to learn. I mean, one that Ramki today handles around 60% of India's waste, right? So that is quite a big chunk of India's waste management being handled by one company. And Net Zero is one wing of it, which today handles the carbon markets for it. Would it be fair to make that assessment?
I would say that NetZERO is an organization, when you name NetZERO, so a lot of organizations are working towards their net zero goals. So
Right.
some organization XYZ organization says that by 2030 I want to be net zero. By 2050 I want to be net zero neutral. It
Hmm.
is like it could be carbon neutral, it could be water neutral, all those areas. But net zero as an organization is focused in terms of being a sustainability partner to the brand, in
Right.
terms of there are a lot of issues when we actually go and reach out to brands. If you're actually really solving the problem which is there, which the brand is facing, so
Right.
there are multiple vendors. If you look at NetZERO is a connecting arm, it is an arm and reaching out to the brand where
Hmm.
we are actually solving their pain areas. If you look
Hmm.
at some organizations are looking at organic waste management,
Hmm.
some organizations are looking at building landfills, some organizations are looking at testings, anything to do with air, water, soil testings. They are also looking at analytics. They are also
Hmm.
looking at decarbonization strategies. They are
Correct.
also looking at EPR, regulatory, compliance, carbon projects, and all those things. There are so many things which are evolving. So brands want support. And Net
Right.
Zero is going to be the one organization which is the extended arm of resustainability, which is going to solve brands' problem at the ground level.
Very interesting, very interesting. So we know also the fact that when you last spoke, you mentioned that you have a background in economics. So how did that transition happen from economics to today heading net zero?
So again, economics and economy relatively are synonyms, words going together.
One of the
So
pillars of
when we
sustainability.
Yeah, very much. So when you talk about economics, I will give you a classic example where today brands, there are liabilities which are coming on brands. Let me also make this opportunity to thank Government of India, the
Hmm.
way actual things are happening at a ground level. So you have Ministry of Environment, you have Central Pollution Control Board, you have State Pollution Control Boards, and you have various verticals which are evolving. There are plastic, e-waste, battery, tire, used oil. There are 10, 15 new entities and compliance and regulatory frameworks which are coming up. But when you talk about real economics,
Hmm.
so there is some charge which we pay to the actually brand for buying. Let's say if I have to buy some paste, or let's say if I have to buy some detergent. So there is a recycling cost to it. So when you talk about economics, those costing, end of the day, who's going to pay that cost?
Yeah.
End of the day, it is going to come to consumer. But as an organization, as a group entity, as an advisor to the government and supporting this ecosystem, what we are trying to do is we are engaging with the government side of it. We are also engaging with the brand side of it and trying to catch the single element of economics. How do this economics can be made a circular economy? So that is one area which we are working on, where the brands also benefit, the nation also benefits, and relative the customer also. So
Right.
that's my overview, Roshan.
Very interesting, very interesting, and the entire journey of yours has been also interesting to hear. And when you mention that the change starts from family, I think that's something all of us resonate on. Because we can be preaching, going out, talking to people about sustainability, but we do not, if we do not practice it at our own home, the entire thing is lost, right?
Agree,
So,
agree.
my next question to you is this: for our listeners who are just beginning their sustainability journey, how would you define the shift from viewing environmental responsibility as a compliance burden to seeing it as a strategic business asset?
Thanks, thanks. That's a wonderful question, Roshan. So just to add, when you talk about sustainability as a journey, I would classify into three areas.
Hmm.
First is we'll start from the communities which are emerging. We are
Hmm.
talking about the Gen Z. We are talking about the young people who are graduating, even passing out from 10th. So
Hmm.
in fact, when I started telling you in terms of sustainability starts at home. So even at an individual level, at a family level, people don't know at what there is a mode of AC mode which you're supposed to use. People use it at 18, people use it at 24. What is the right mode of actually saving in terms of contributing to the environment over there? The kind of emissions which are coming from AC as such. So that
Hmm.
is from a learning per se. But if you look at sustainability as a journey, the organizations are evolving, the institutions are evolving. Surprisingly, if you see and do a research over the last 3 or 4 years, the key tag word of sustainability has evolved so much. I was just going through with a random organization. I would say that Bits is coming out with this year with a sustainability kind of tag. So this
Hmm.
is the right embedded things which are coming up. So if you look at a lot of sustainability, AI, and automotive automation related, robotics related courses which are coming up, there are universities and institutions which are starting. So these are the core, I would say that the vent or the roots which are there, which are evolving. That is one. Secondly, the area where the sustainability related jobs are which are emerging. So one
Hmm.
is the college, the student segment. Secondly, to substantiate that, support that, the community which is evolving. So there are a lot of sustainability jobs which are coming up. If you look at these are becoming, I would say that not the chat GPTs of the world, but relatively the LinkedIn's of the world. If you look at the lot of insights, since they work on algorithms,
Hmm.
sustainability is one area. I would say that globally, it is going to be the next 10 years of journey where people are looking for sustainable professionals. So those kind of sustainability professionals are that's the need. So
Yeah.
if you categorize sustainability professionals are first, then followed by robotics, then followed by AI. These are the three industries which are evolving. So going back to your question, how sustainability is evolving, one is on the student front, secondly on the kind of career growth front, third is at an organization level.
Hmm.
So there are actually carpools which are happening at an organization level. How do we make things sustainable over here?
Yeah.
People are. I was surprised to see. I do not want to name a brand, but some organizations which are creating. There can be names like Zoho and other organizations which are creating remote offices where the electricity, the power, the renewable energy adoption, there are biogas, which are all those adoptions which are coming in place.
Hmm.
But there are organizations which are moving towards the sustainability path. So coming back on this sustainability journey, I think it starts with student, the employee, and the organization. These three people
Absolutely.
are really creating an impact.
Right. But Vinod, my question was more focused from the organization's point of view, that is from the business point of view, right? So presently in India, what the kind of sense that we get is most companies are taking up sustainability because of a compliance requirement. Somebody is enforcing it on them. But instead of viewing it as a compliance requirement, how can the shift happen to seeing sustainability as a business asset?
So India, again, on a lighter note, has been practicing sustainability through n number of ages as such.
Yeah.
But the kind of level of pollutions which are there, it could be related to plastic waste primarily, and it
Hmm.
could be related to air, water, and all. So regulatory framework has to be there. So
Right.
we as Indians, we need to have, there are, unless and until there are rules which are imposed, things doesn't fall in place. I am sorry, I'm being candid about it, but that's the reality. Unless and until
Yeah.
you do that, things don't fall in place. So voluntary, there is a cost to it. So if you
Mm.
have to be a voluntary, if you have to subsidize the cost, if you have to do that, then definitely yes, there is a cost to it. There are organizations which are also turning out to be kind of a eco-friendly environment which they are building up. It could be related to places. There are offices which are, so there is a thin line where the regulatory framework is coming up, which is asking people to be sustainable, asking the brands to get into sustainability journey as such.
Hmm.
That is the compliance per se. But on the other way, brands have proactively started communicating or started thinking, how do I bring back the recycled content? So if
Right.
there is recycled plastic, if there are recycled clothing, I was going through one of the recent LinkedIn posts, which was there. There is also an Instagram post which was talking about a clothing, a tone clothing, which was fetching kind of lakhs.
Really.
So yeah. So I was actually looking at where people actually wear
Mm.
textile. If you actually, you will not believe this, in the kind of municipal solid waste which comes out
Yeah.
of the municipal solid waste facilities, around 25 to 26% is textile waste.
Just textile.
So but the best part about it is people are not aware and what kind of waste which are getting generated, what kind of waste which are getting thrown. So if
Mm.
you look at again little sustainability initiatives at an individual organization level, what we are also trying to do is we have built up an app which at the moment there are sanitary waste rules which are coming up. So sanitary waste again has to be disposed of directly to the incinerator and not the collector as such. So what we are trying to build is we have built up a relatively app in Kerala. It is operational right now. Around 1 lakh households, they dispose their sanitary waste through an app. So we go and collect from home. The
Okay.
same thing we are trying to bring it. Today, if you have given a battery, you go and what you do, you go and just throw it in the dustbin.
Yeah.
That's all. Paper, you have a habit which is built up. You accumulate the paper and you go and sell it to the
That's it.
Raddiwalas.
Kapadiwala.
So yeah, kabadi wala. So that is what we are trying to build. And
Mm.
at the moment, we are trying to collect from each and every home where actually the sustainability initiatives can come in place and it can become a practice. So a
Right.
mix of regulation and practice
Both are
are
required.
evolving.
Yeah, yeah. But again, my I think you did point that out that in India at least compliance is required for sustainability to be implemented, and of course most companies today see it as a cost point. Sustainability as is viewed as a cost. But there are also classical examples of certain companies who have taken to sustainability, who have seen either reduction in their operational costs or maybe seen increase in their market share or profit. So that's what we are referring to as business assets. But very interesting point that you brought out. The sanitary pads, instead of putting it in a regular mix, you intend to incinerate it, right? But my question here, Vinodji, is this: that do you pay some kind of a premium or an incentive to the people who give you this sanitary pads or sanitary related bathroom waste for it to be incinerated? Is there a incentive provided to them for them to be segregating it separately and giving to you away?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So, what we are again, I would not take the name of the brand. So, but it is, I think, one of the global leader brand which we are in talks with, where there can be a collective working along with the brands.
Hmm.
So, where actually the brand is looking at who is buying my sanitary waste, which household is buying that. So,
Hmm.
this app relatively gives brand the data
Yeah.
in terms of giving which house the sanitary waste is getting picked up,
Yeah.
and the person who is buying those sanitary pads at home, they get a huge discount from the
That's
brand
for the
directly.
next purchase that they make.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're right. So it becomes a circular. The brand gets a direct
Absolutely.
customer, intermediaries are removed. At the same time, the practice is evolved.
Yeah, I mean, I suddenly recalled a company. I think they're out of Bangalore. We had a conversation previously called Bintix. So they also do something similar, but they manage waste at large. But they're presently using a tech to I think a image sensory setup, which kind of scans the waste that is generated and provides data to the OEMs or the companies which make them. That is, which pin codes, what kind of products are used the highest, so that they can also plan their thing accordingly. So it is a very unique business concept, and I'm glad that you brought this point out. My next question to you, Vinod, is this: that Resustainability today manages around 7 million tons of waste annually across India, Southeast Asia, and Middle East, right? So, from this vantage point, what is the correlation you are seeing between waste management infrastructure investment and carbon credit generation potential? Can you quantify this upside?
Yeah. So if you actually look at as an organization, so carbon market globally it is evolved. It is a relatively voluntary market. And if you look at India as a regulatory body, again, which is coming up, Carbon Market Association, we are talking carbon regulatory, we are talking about green credits, all that. So let's say I have to give you a classic example of NetZERO as an organization or resustainability. What we are trying to do is we have got our own 108 facilities. So I am
Mhm.
sure these facilities also emit carbon. So what we are trying to do is, let's say if it is a municipal solid waste, there are carbon emissions which are being actually targeted, relatively produced, and we are actually trying to generate carbon credits out of it through biomethanization and other different kinds of projects. If you look at our biomedical waste facilities which are there, so there are a lot of waste. Of course, it is getting into the incineration, but how do we actually capitalize it in terms of putting up solars, putting up electric vehicles, and how do we start generating carbon credits out of our own facilities? That is another area which we are working out. These are so internally we have our own internal many projects which we are trying to counter and take it. So if you look at, we have one of largest plant at Punjab Jhajjar end of life vehicle.
Mhm.
So again, there is a thin line between there is a regulatory compliance of the government on the EPR framework. Then there is again carbon credit. So there should not be a greenwashing. So we are taking care of that. Resustainability as an organization has always been known for their due diligence and compliance kind of thing. So end of life vehicle, the new rules which has come up from the government of India. So like something like, if I had to give you a classic example, steel, it correlates to the EPR regulatory framework. There
Right.
are all other metals, there are construction and demolition waste and all those areas where we can work on and generate carbon credits. So India, by the way, is really evolving. Again, we are looking at something big where we actually go and solve at a global level apart from the voluntary market. So sitting over here, I get to know what is happening at, let's say, Japan. So which company, what is the kind of liabilities they got, what are the organization's strength in terms of reaching out to net zero goals, what are the decarbonization strategies, and how I can support them. My organizations can support them. And I think one key area, Roshan, which I would like to touch base is due diligence and compliance and ethical way of working. This is one way of area which we are contributing and we are very strong about,
Mhm.
because this is carbon market is, again, it is very volatile, it is very dynamic, and
Yeah.
the credits are sold globally. So I think those kind of insights and I would say that the hard work which is getting in terms of getting the due diligence, there are certification, registration, bodies, and all that. So we're working on all those areas to evolve.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we will try and dissect carbon markets and try to get a better understanding of carbon markets through you in the next segment. But for the listeners, I think you use the terminology EPR. EPR stands for Extended Producer Responsibility. Just putting it out there. I understand that when we have this conversation, we tend to use terminologies, abbreviations, because we are so used to listening to them, right? Uh, but interesting that that you brought this point out. Any projects that can save carbon or carbon emissions is likely a project which is capable of getting carbon credits, and that's the kind of work that you at Net Zero and Resustainability are presently doing. So, Vinodji, thank you so much for giving me this quick intro to who you are, what you do, what Net Zero does, and what Resustainable does, and the kind of operations that you today possess, not just in India but across the globe today. My next question is just keeping future, that is 2047 in this picture. That is, India envisions to be a net zero country by 2070, right? And India is also coming up with its own carbon credit market, which is now in talks. Of course, it has to go a certain distance for it to be evolved. So, what is your predictions for the India's carbon market, let's say moving up to 2047? How do you see this evolving?
I think fantastic area which you have touch based. And I would say that Roshan, first and foremost, should not be calling me G. You should call me by name Vinod.
Vinod.
That's
Okay.
very important. I
Awesome.
prefer that. And if you actually look at, as I mentioned, carbon as a market, so there are multiple kind of carbons which are there. People are, I would actually start up from a base work, which they are talking about different kinds of carbons. There are blue carbons, there are relatively brown carbons, there are black carbons. So different, so understanding, educating. So we are also partnering and working along on the education sector. We do the information education relatively for all the organizations who are there in the sustainability space. We work with the government schools, we work with the private schools in terms of building this education on what this carbon is all about and how these emissions can be controlled. Education is a key to success. That is one.
Mm-hmm.
Secondly, if you look at India as a market, it is still, I would say that not even evolved, even not even 1% of it. But I think globally, there are areas or there are regulations which are coming up. So all the multinational companies which are talking about their net zero goals, which are trying to evolve, how do I substantiate? How do I live up to my targets? How do I start delivering and reach out to those targets? So carbon as a market is evolving. As I told earlier, Indian registries relatively are so there are methodologies which are getting evolved now. There
Mm-hmm.
are registries which are getting evolved. There are Indian government, which is again started evolving. If you also look at an international level, there are like Singapore, like UAE, all this, the government entities have started purchasing
Sure.
credits. So that is a very good sign. If you look at Uttar Pradesh, it is related to agriculture, it is talking about fertilizer, it is talking about carbon credits. So a place like UP, when things are getting evolved and taking to that level,
Yeah.
I'm sure as an organization, as a country, we are growing on this. Apart from that, I think a very important area where there are a lot of project owners, I would say that, which are handicapped, which are relatively, they have created so many umpteen number of thousands of projects.
Mm.
And there are somebody on the buyer side of it, which the relatively brands which are there. So if you look at some good work which we are trying to do, we are actually taking the next journey forward. We are connecting, I would call as a connector, as a player in between the project owners and relatively at the brands level,
Mm-hmm.
where there is a requirement for the brands to achieve their net zero goals, and how net zero as an organization can contribute and substantiate in delivering their projects. That is on the long term basis from the carbon emissions factor as such. But if you actually look at again, Roshan, on there are requirements where, let's say, if I'm talking about an organization like a classic example of let's say RPG or C8 or these kind of organizations which is working on water neutrality. So
Mm.
how carbon can support, how water neutrality targets can be achieved through carbon. So those kind of strategic initiatives which are required, those kind of insights which are required. So global organizations are quickly adaptable. We are
Yeah.
also doing the second journey of it, where the Indian organizations which start adopting in terms of carbon methodologies, carbon registries. So the awareness is very less. So we are building an education platform for the learners who are there. We have also started proactively reaching out to a lot of brands. We work
Mm.
with around 50,000 brands. So we have started reaching out to them, and not only on the advisory and consulting framework, but educating. There are a core team of sustainability team, there is a procurement team, there are different teams, bringing them all them together and giving a kind of learning sessions to them. What is carbon credit all about? How do you reduce your carbon credits? What are the substantial ways we can do it? So all those kind of lot of things which are actually there is something called a scope 1, there is scope 2, scope 3. A lot of people don't even understand what is scope 1, scope 2, scope 3. So
Yeah.
talking, engaging with people, and actually being part of a lot of course, I am thankful to people like you who are connecting it and taking it to the next level, because I'm sure this podcast will reach out to the millions of people over there who can actually learn a lot of things. And these are classy questions which you are asking. I am actually enjoying this journey of this question in Q&A session, because it is more of a learning. So the
Yeah.
questions what you also trigger or ask, it actually inculcates, and we start actually asking question to ourselves.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the one takeaway for me from the answer just that it just provided me that India's carbon markets is still in its very nascent stage. We have not even touched 1%, is what you mentioned. So there is a lot of scope for growth and potential for investors also to come in and play this game in the carbon market. Do you agree on that, Vinod?
Totally, I'm bang on. In fact, all many of the organizations which are looking at seed investing, we are looking at one, two, three, four investings. Now it is being made mandate.
Yeah,
You will be zapped to know that there are auditors, there are big fours, there are consulting organizations who are reaching out to us in terms of supporting them. These are being mandate. So every organization need to disclose their carbon emissions, need to
yeah,
understand what are the kind of GHC reporting, BRSR, and all those things. So there are a lot of due diligence checks which are coming in place. And unless and until it is being certified by an auditor, how good the organization is in terms of supporting them on the carbon neutral. And a lot of organizations are not moving ahead for funding or supporting. And
absolutely.
if at all the organizations are also getting listed and
Hmm.
getting that certified through organizations like us, and I think I will just little take one more minute to understand. So there are asset managers, there are asset services which are coming in place, there are brokerages which are coming in place, there are corporate advisors, then there are again exchanges and vendors who are evolving. There are insurance companies which are coming in place. There are relatively private asset managers who are coming in place. So all these basically who are contributing to the one on the waste management ecosystem and parallelly supporting all the investors and guiding them. How do we actually do this transition? You
Yeah,
need to go and invest in this organization. That
yeah.
is a bang on thing which they are bringing in.
Very interesting, very interesting. And you did, I think, for somebody who's listening to the podcast, who's just trying to get into this field of sustainability, it clearly shows that there are a lot of new job opportunities that likely will pop out in the coming years. I mean, just as an extension to the same question, before we jump to the carbon markets and the carbon credit system and all of that, you mentioned the word auditor, right? So, who is qualified to be providing this certificate? What is the requirement an individual should possess to be able to provide this certificate to somebody like an organization?
So as an so government at the moment, Central Pollution Control Board, they have their own certified auditors. That is one part of it. But if you look at, there are different compliances. There are ESG audits which are evolving. There are EPR related audits which are evolving. There are recycler audits which are evolving. Then again, there are carbon related audits which are there. There are global again verifiers which are there. So very importantly, the government is bringing the regulatory framework. What they are talking about circularity.
Yeah,
So there are verified certificate with traceability they are asking. So are the recycler compliance? So there are compliance checks which are talking. I would also like to take an example of a leading Korean e-waste brand which has gone and hired EY PwC as an auditor for them in terms of checking actually how accurate is the POM validation which is there, how verified is the recyclers, how genuine are the credits which are there. So these are some areas. Also, government is building one of the largest, I would say that platform, which is talking about an audited credits which are getting evolved, which
mm,
is from the extended producer responsibility, whether it is plastic, e-waste, battery, tires, all these areas, or the carbon markets. Of course, there are global registries and audit firms, but I think audit is a very important parameter. At the moment, it is not the so-called authorized auditor as such,
yeah.
but anybody who's there in the audit field, who is actually working with the brands as such, they can be a certified auditor, and that's it.
Yeah, I mean that's something that I wanted to bring about that the authorized auditor. There is no one body that kind of overviews all of this because this is one question even we at Carbon Mandal get asked that who is the most qualified for this bit. I mentioned the same thing. Whoever has the right background in this very field and who has spent enough years to do an auditing and has a certificate or a degree in the same field is qualified to get it done. But due diligence is something that is extremely important to avoid the greenwashing part, right? This is also something that we as practitioners need to be very mindful about. because the credibility of this entire carbon credits is entirely dependent on the methodology, the due diligence, the monitoring, the process that happens after, right? So, with this, we'll switch gears to the next topic for today, which is looking at the carbon credits as currency, decoding the emerging market. We did touch upon this bit or this subject in the first topic itself, where I asked you questions on how do you see the India's market emerging in, I mean, leading to 2047, where we are imagining for a Vikasit Bharat, that is 100th years of year of our independent India. So let's start with the very basic, Vinod. What is a carbon credit? If you can explain it simply to our listeners, and who buys them, and why are they becoming so valuable today?
Yeah, I think very valid point. So if you look at any of the organizations which are actually into a manufacturing one, so there are carbon emissions which actually being emitted. It
Mhm.
could be different kinds of carbons in the manufacturing way. It could be different as a layman. If you look at, you're traveling by air, so there is air carbon which is emitted. If you're traveling by car, there are car carbon which is emitted. So these are different kinds of. You have to give you a classic example of a factory which is using a lot of electricity or coal or different kinds of power to actually emit a lot of carbons. And if that can be substantiated or converted into a solar, if solar or windmills are installed over there, relatively the carbon emissions come down as a layman. And when you actually move into this transition, when you adopt to this, so carbon credits, there is a process you start of generating this credit. So if you are moving to a renewable energy sector, so instead of the fossil fuel like coal or gas, you move to the wind or solar regions, then actually this process starts. So once the process is initiated, once you start installing this at a factory level, so it doesn't rely on any of the brands. If this is the turnover which is required, it should be SME, it should be corporate, or it should be enterprise. So any organization can adopt it, and relatively they can go and reach out to the third party auditor. Third party auditor are relatively organizations who are actually taking care how the carbon dioxide which is there, which is actually resulting in avoidance, that is being looked at. There are greenhouse gases actually which is come. So there are international protocols which are set. So based on that, relatively these organizations verify. So there are verifiers. There is a specific methodology. If I by installing a solar, or relatively how do I actually calculate the carbon credit. So there is an international audit team, there is a registry team which comes and does the audit and checks. And once the credits are verified based on the registries and based on the opinion of the third party auditors and all, they do the internal check whether the carbons are generated, it is ethical, right, whether it is of global repute, and whether it can be actually sold in the global markets, the valuations and all that. Once that is done, there is a certificate which is actually issued. It can be digital, it can be physical. So carbon credits are now created. That is what is the terminology which these people actually, the registries confirm
Yeah.
that this particular firm has generated so many carbon credits in terms of avoidance of greenhouse gas, and this particular project now is certified to get listed into the registries, and it can be sold. So once these carbon emissions avoidance is calculated and it is allocated to the business, so business, I mean the organizations, those credits are available for organizations to sell in the market.
Right.
And once these credits are available to be sold in the market, and let's say X organization can go and buy those carbon credits at an international price, which is a voluntary, and they give a substantiation telling that I have bought so many credits and my carbon emissions have reduced. I
Right.
hope I am able to
Yeah, I mean,
substantiate that.
it is extremely difficult to simplify the entire process, because there are so many stakeholders that are involved in this entire process. I mean, I as a practitioner, or as a consultant, I do agree with this pain point that a lot of people come up. There is so much complexity into this entire thing that is ongoing presently, which we would hope for it to be simplified in the coming years, with better regulation perhaps. But again, my question is, who buys it, Vinod?
Yeah, these are basically today in the global market, these are international brands, international communities which are buying. And carbon, also just to add, Roshan, over here, there are carbon currencies which are now getting evolved. So
Yeah.
there are terminologies which at one point of time, which were talking about blockchain
Yeah.
and kind of blockchain certified credits.
Cryptocurrencies.
So yeah, cryptos. So there is monetization which is also happening. So
Hmm.
basically, these are corporates and brands who are buying these credits
Right.
to basically achieve their net zero goals.
Absolutely. So to simply put, companies with the requirement to reach or no, maintain a certain or adhere to certain carbon emissions, like Europe has ETS, emission trading scheme, where companies are put a certain cap on how much they can emit, and if they go beyond that, these are companies which are liable to purchase carbon credits to meet the local regulatory laws. And I think India is also right now coming up with something similar, where energy intensive companies like steel, aluminum, cement, these companies are now being monitored on their carbon emissions. And over a period of time, perhaps they'll also be put a cap where they'll be then mandated to either invest heavily on decarbonization or rather make a choice of purchasing carbon credits from the market from those who have successfully managed to uh, either avoid carbon emissions for issuing of carbon credits. Right, great. So, that gave a lot of clarity. I hope it has given a lot of clarity for our listeners to understand how carbon credits gets generated and who buys them. And the price of the carbon market is a next question, right? I mean, a lot of them who come to us also ask what is the cost of, or I mean, what is the price of carbon markets? Because today, investing in a stock market has become easier with multiple platforms because it is very transparent. The price of a particular share is available for everyone to see. But when it comes to carbon credits, not many platforms trade. I mean, there is no transparency with those things. So if there are an investor who is wanting to understand the pricing of the carbon credit or want to know how they can be a part of this entire carbon market, what would your recommendations for them be? Are there places where they can find this information, or how do they be an integral part, or become a player in this carbon market system?
Yeah, Roshan. So just to give you a little overview, I'll take you at a helicopter level
Yeah.
where we are talking about something called as carbon currencies. So if you look at carbon, there are something which is evolving, which is known as carbon coins. So
Right.
this is another area which is an emerging economy that is showing a actually huge future. It is also gaining traction into the coming years, which are talking about massive funding gap, which you touch base as such. So if you look at currency again, there are global carbon reward programs which are evolving. There are monetized mitigation risks which are there, which are actually evolving, which you can mitigate this risk through the carbon coins which are there. Apart from that, I think the areas which are talking about the issuance, the volatility of the market, which has to be brought in. If you're talking about blockchain, AI integrations, and all those coming in, so we are trying to build all this. So we have, I think, you'll be, or any organization, I would say that sitting over there, anybody in the world will able to get into a net zero platform, and they will get an access to see. Let's give a classic example of an organization called a leading Japanese firm sitting at Japan, and they want to achieve their net zero goals. And I over here sitting get to know that this particular X organization in Japan, they would like to achieve their net zero goals by 2030. And
Hmm.
how many carbon credits have they bought, from which registry they have bought, from which organization they have bought, at what rate they have got, and relatively how do I substantiate that in terms of we are talking about say let's say organizations like there's an organization in China which is talking about green energy credits relatively, which are low carbon activities. It could be emission related to walking or emission related to bus. So all these areas sounds really grayish,
Yeah.
but relatively if you are actually planting trees and all that, so net zero as an organization, you will have a clear cut entity when these credits are generated, when these credits are actually getting retired, in which country, what are the credits which are actually, it doesn't say that you have to become net zero through this country. So
Yeah.
let's say
Can
India
purchase
is
it
more
anywhere.
a kind of economical country, so they can buy credits from India and retire and achieve their net zero goals.
Right.
I have been working with a lot of FMCG companies which are talking about uh, achieving their global net zero goals target through India as a region. So those are real areas which are evolving. So coming back on this, net zero as an organization would be the go-to-market partner
Yeah.
where we will have thousands of project owners along with us. There are thousands of organizations who are going to work with us, and relatively, we work with all the registries, and everything is transparent and clear.
Great. For the question that I just asked you, you have identified it as a pain point and now coming up with a solution from net zero. Great. So I mean, I'll be definitely looking forward to this platform that you're trying to build, Vinod. And I'm glad that there are companies like yourself who are now coming up with building something up, ground up, that can kind of address the pain points most of us are today facing, where there is lack of transparency, especially within the carbon market. Right, great. So let me ask you the next question, which is presently when you talk about carbon markets, we have the voluntary and the compliance market, right? The CDM and the clean development mechanism on one side, and the voluntary market, like which is right today run by organizations like Gold Standard, Vera, and things like that. So uh, can you give me some insights into that you're currently working with Gold Standard Registry for your 15 active projects? So why is certification and standardization so critical in the carbon credit space, and what happens when projects aren't properly verified?
So I think I will go back to my answer, what I was mentioning on our end of life vehicle plant, which is there. So I'm saying this is a very volatile market. So where let's say we talk example of a recycler or at a ground level,
Hmm.
they can generate EPR credits. They can also generate carbon credits through the same activity.
Yeah.
But here is what we are coming from is we are also working very closely with the government in terms of their advisory and supporting them and giving them guidance and educating what is happening at a global market and all that. So where the dual credit mechanism is not in place, the greenwashings are not happening, how do we actually certify? How does Indian registries get into a certification mode of certifying that these carbon credits are genuine credits
Right.
and there is no double dual washing which is happening on relatively on the EPR front and also on the carbon credit front?
Right.
So this is one area which we are working on the government space. But again, globally, this is a very important point. So we are also partnering with a lot of that is one big force and the second level of organizations, audit and certification firms, where there is a lot of due diligence and traceability which will come in place. We are also building, let's say, we have a team of 110, 120 people who are actually managing our own plants and locations. We are also doing a due diligence checks externally to the organizations as a value added services and specifically to your factory specific to your emissions. How do we actually, so educating is a key to success, so we are
Yeah.
building up on that.
Hmm, hmm, hmm. Very, I mean, I think there is clearly some problem areas that requires addressing. I think we will not have any differences with that opinion, and I'm also very hopeful that in the coming years, all these issues will be addressed, the pain points will be addressed, where the complexity around the carbon markets will be simplified. One, two is awareness also has to be developed within the general public, where having a better understanding of what carbon markets stand for, why are they important, how are they solving the problem of climate change, because the entire picture or this entire mechanism of carbon market is to solve the climate change problem, right? So how was it being a part of that, and what different types of carbon credits, what do they stand for? I think you also gave an introduction in the first segment of the conversation, the gray carbons, the green carbon. There are different grading of that very project as well. So Vinod, thank you for that. I will have one last question in this very topic, which is India's carbon credit market is nascent compared to the global markets like European Union or voluntary carbon markets. So, given your organization's 15 active projects, what's the current price realization per ton of CO2 you're achieving, and how do you expect this to evolve as the market matures? My question is pertaining to the pricing of the carbon credits.
Yeah, so again, if I have to give you little insights, these are voluntary global markets and the credits which are generated. So if you look at specifically biomethanization related credits, there are EV credits which are evolving. So there are relatively again water credits which are evolving. So every credit has a value.
Mhm.
So again, it is these are tradable credits and it is very dynamic in the market in nature. So what generally happens is there are countries. So it is also related to countries. It is also related to the kind of net zero goals what they have. So if
Right.
you look at continental as a group, they have a net zero in terms of water related net zero goals. So
Mhm.
to achieve those net zero, the specific tradable credits. So it is kind of a demand and supply, to be very frank with you.
Yeah.
So how good? So EV, if you look at EV or the EV fleets, adaptability, those kind of credits which are getting evolved. So those are one area where actually people are able to really cash on. This is one area I would say that those kind of credits which are evolving, where EV there is a demand in the market where organizations have started procuring credits. So if you have to name some, there are climate credits which are there. There are again sustainable agriculture credits. There are renewable credits. There are solid carbon credits. There are plastic credits. So if you look at we as an organization, we are one of India's, I think, largest, I think, one and only collector and recycler for the ocean-bound plastic. So we are the plastic credit. Then there are community-based credits which are evolving. Then there are sustainable forestry credits which are there. Of course, energy efficiency certificates which are already evolved. And there are water quality credits. There are also something new angle to it, which will be very interesting for you, Roshan, is there are blue credits which we are talking about. So we are doing a project. We have also got involved. We have a extended arm, which is a CSR arm of us. We are doing a project at Sundarbans,
Okay.
and relatively, we are also doing a project at Punjab over there, doing a real life change on that at a
Are
community
you
level.
referring to the mangrove plantation?
Yeah, yeah. So
Okay.
mangrove plantations over there. So those anything to do with sea as a layman approach,
Yeah.
anything over there which counts as blue, which comes into kind of blue credits. But relatively, what is happening? The CSR angle is also coming in play. There is a framework which has come from the government of India. So CSR, the carbon, the biodiversity conservation credits, the nutrition credits, the wetland mitigation credits, all this. So credits is a huge market. It is not related to carbon, but
Yeah.
these are the credits which are evolving.
Yeah. So, I mean, very rightly said. There are so many terminologies that you just mentioned about credits and the number of kind of credits, the variety of credits that exists out there, and I believe this is the very thing that is creating a lot of complexity for a layman to understand this very world, and that's of course I think where consultants and companies like yourselves come into play. Uh, but again, I mean, I'm very hopeful and looking forward to the platform that you're trying to build, where maybe there is some form of transparency to understand the pricing. It is very dynamic, as you rightly mentioned. It is based on the supply and demand of this credits that is out there in the market. So the price point, having, I mean, defining, putting a number on it might be extremely difficult for you as well. But looking into the future, perhaps that problem will be solved. But what is the kind of timeline that you're looking at for this platform to be built, Vinod?
I think sooner the better. Relatively, we are up on work. So there is a lot of, as I mentioned, due diligence. So there is one area of registries which is there. There
Mm,
is another area of kind of new technologies which are coming in. How do I really bring in the blockchain or the AI piece into it? How
right.
do I avoid the double counting? How do I get out of the additionality factor as such? How do I actually measure the permanence and the leakage part of it? And
Mm,
very importantly, how do I build the trust for investors and auditors on this to really get compliant
yeah.
and be an anti-greenwashing organization? So we are bringing all this. We are a tech, also evolved company. We are hosting a lot of startups, and we are doing real sustainability journey. We have actually had a huge pool of students also who are supporting us and building this.
Mm.
And I think should be operational and running in the next relatively 30 to 60 days as such.
30 to 60 days. Okay, we were looking at not even one
Yeah,
year
yeah,
within that.
yeah.
Oh,
This
okay.
journey has been there for the last 1 year,
Okay.
and just to share, our MD CEO, this the project has been very close to his heart, and he also represents the CII as an organization,
Right.
and we would really like to do a value add into this particular area where we connect the
Okay.
brands, the recyclers, the individuals, the at a global level also. So, from an India per se, we would like to be a leading company. I think one of the world's last large three leading companies. That is what we would like to represent net zero as.
Very, very ambitious. And kudos to the team. And I wish you all the very, very best. Looking forward to checking out that platform. Would that platform be available for the public, or is it a B2B kind of a setup?
No, no, it is going to be available in public. And
Okay.
for the public to go through, understand what exactly different kinds of credits. There's also going, we are building a huge circularity park where
Very.
it could be kind of an visit for the organization, for the students to learn, understand what is happening at waste. That is one area. And
Mhm.
relatively, also the platform will have a, of course, login access and all for the brands for
Mhm.
them to reach out. So we are also already working with 50,000 brands. So it is just an enabler for them so that they can mitigate their carbon emissions and credits.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Vinod, you have given nuggets of information, I mean, golden nuggets of information in this very conversation because you touched upon multiple uh, aspects within the carbon markets, the terminologies, and of course, this is not a subject that can be explained within an hour. So it might require years of training practice to understand how the system works, how the market works, how the due diligence works, and all of that. But whatever said and done, this podcast, I'm hoping for it to be an eye opener for a layman to understand what carbon markets stand for, how we can be an integral participant in this entire ecosystem. You've also given me a good topic or a good pointer for a segue or to move to the next topic of circularity, right? Because you also mentioned that as a part of building awareness among students and things like that, you're trying to have that as a as an educatory part of your exercise. So the next topic is circular economy as a bridge from theory to action. So circular economy is a buzzword. Everybody, I think, most companies today who wants themselves to be marketed or branded as a sustainable brand uses or the terminology of circular economy. So, uh, but it often stays theoretical, So, in your work, how do you translate the concept of circular into concrete, measurable outcomes?
Yeah, Roshan. So just to add, if you look at last 4 years, our the so-called Indian government has been very, very aggressive in building this. So if you go to the Ministry of Environment and also the CPCB, the Central Pollution Control Board website,
Hmm.
so there are designations which are coming, the government designations which is talking about circular economy.
Mm.
So that's a huge change and transition. These are not enterprises, these are not corporates, these are government.
Yeah.
Government is given a designation at a director level, people who have joined. If you see the recent note and all, where this it is there in the designation which is talking about circular economy.
Mm.
So government is regulating it. Parallelly, the brands are also adopting it. So I will again give a classic example, and we are actually facilitating it. How do we make it happen? So
Right.
let's say we are buying an AC. So the government regulates that after 10 years it has to be recycled. So how does the AC come back? So what we are trying to do, we are doing it in the same thing in end of life vehicle also.
The
So the
EPR.
large brands which are there, any kind of car brands which are there and vehicles which are there. So there is an end of life certificate which has to be issued from the government of India. So that is a regulatory framework. What we are trying to build up. So there is a liability on the brand that you have to get the end of life recycled. So we have the infra. We have built up the infra for getting the vehicle over there. Now
Hmm.
the vehicle coming over there is a logistic issue. So we are the supporting partner for them. So
Hmm.
there are kind of RVSF facilities in terms of facilities which actually do the vehicle dismantling and other.
Dismantling. Yeah.
Yeah. So we have tied up with them. So we have, let's say, let's take a classic example of one of the brand of one car. They have multiple their dealer showrooms and multiple locations. So we have signed up with them. So what we do is the customer as an individual, you have a car, your end of life car is done. You go and give your car over there. There is a price which is given, and the car from there is shipped and moved to the RVSF facility through us. And relatively, what we provide over there is we dismantle the car and we provide an ethical sourcing certificate for the customer that this car is dismantled over here. This is the end of life certificate for you. So
Mm.
once the certificate is given back to the customer entitles a discount. He can go and buy and purchase a new car over there.
Very
So
interesting.
this is government initiative, circularity. What we do from that circularity is we give it back to the organization. So organization says, my front dashboard, there are plastic recyclable components which are there. So we
Mhm.
recycle it, make it in form of granules. And if you look at tire, we take out the tire, there are crumb rubber, there are oil which are getting pyrolysis oil which are getting extracted and all. We give it back to the organizations for using it, reuse.
Mhm.
So those government is also mandating, like if an organization is manufacturing and using plastic, there is a component of 30% they are supposed to reuse. So those recycled content,
Has to be.
recycled granules, those has to come back to the circular economy. So circular economy in action from the government regulation, we as a partner to facilitating it, and brands implementing it. So brands actually help channelize it, and they use this circular material into their manufacturing, and they have started certifying. They are supposed to declare. So government talks about traceability, GST, and all that stuff. So
Yeah.
brands also are supposed to declare.
Hmm.
So we are being the tech enabler for them. We are bringing the circularity platform enabler for them, where the material got produced and where it is going, where it is being used, and where it is finally. If you look at battery, the car battery transits to multiple cities and goes to some dealer point. How do we bring back those batteries back to the manufacturing unit and give
Yeah.
it back into and get it, take it as a recycling one? So this is some circular economy framework which was there in action around 2 years back, but now you can see real implementation happening
Happening
by
on
the
ground.
government and also by the Indian brands as such.
Yeah, that's really cool to also learn that it has moved from just it being a policy to real action on ground, and with enablers like yourself, I only see that becoming a norm in the coming years, where every OEM has a mandate for taking care of their products, EPR as it is called as, and there is a traceability part which is also added as a layer to it, where an end user will be given a certificate in this case, where he or she will be told that the product at its end of life has been handled correctly, not just ending up in any random landfill. The material is put back in use in certain quantities for the next cycle to begin, right? Thank you, Vinod. I think we touched upon multiple topics, beginning from your journey to understanding carbon markets to also getting an essence of real ground implementation of circular economy today. And of course, we both would agree that it's in its very early nascent stages, with policies that are now being drafted, and some are already in place. And of course, yes, there is an evolution that is required. And in the coming years leading up to 2047, we would want to see that evolving with more clear action, clear mandates for companies as well as for enablers like yourselves to be able to play a part in this entire big picture. My last segment, I mean, we will move to the last segment where we look at the ecosystem, that is how the role of scale, technology, and collaboration. And so I'll take a permission for maybe one or two last questions if it is needed to be. So my question to you is this, that what does it mean to build an ecosystem in the context of carbon credits and the carbon credit and the climate finance, and who are the key players that need to be involved? This is question number one. As a follow to that, before you give me an answer, given that India is aiming to be a Viksit Bharat by 2047, the sustainability is an integral part of that, because it has to be sustained for years to come after. So how do you see, or what are the kind of institutions or stakeholders do you see playing a very integral part into this very ecosystem that we're trying to build?
I think very interesting question over here, Roshan, and a very tough question also, where we are heading as such.
Sorry for
So
making it
again,
difficult.
yeah.
Yeah, please,
So
please,
I think I
please
think
go.
I think carbon credit as a market is massive, and it is, I'm sure it is multi-layered, and the kind of giants which are evolving. It could be tech giants, it could be global financial institutions, or real environmental firms like us, which actually are shifting the focus from the west region to highly professionalized financial ecosystem which we are trying to build up.
Yeah.
I would say that there are key players. I would say that categorize into relatively 4 or 5 guys as such,
Mhm.
guys, or I would say that organizations.
Organizations.
One is relatively on the market standards and the certifiers. So the trust layer is very very important. So if you look at Vera or Gold Standard or Integrity Council, all this, so these people play a very very important role. and with the Indian credit market, which is getting evolved. So Indian registries will also come in play. That is the first area. Secondly, I think the another key stakeholder is relatively on the project developers and suppliers ecosystem. So these are the basic assets. I would say that we are talking about the climate partners. We are talking about real players which are there, who
Yeah.
are actually the player in terms of developing projects and building it and taking it to next level. Third is the support which is required on the technology and the platforms. The I would call it as an infrastructure layer. So there are a lot of infrastructure layer companies who are coming in. There are blockchain and AI enabled companies who are actually coming and supporting this. The fourth one, I would categorize it as financial institutions or exchanges. So
Mm.
this is the capital layer which will come in place. So I think the new policy which is also evolving on the intercontinental exchange, this is going to be one of the kind of world's leading operated in terms of regulated carbon markets. There is World Bank which is actually evolving and which is talking about trends of carbon pricings and initiatives and financial framework. There
Mhm.
are important banks and major banks like Barclays, and I would say that Goldman Sachs, who are evolving, which are talking about hedging, which are talking about government linked investment projects.
Mhm.
So products relatively. And last but not the least, I think the buyers, big organizations to name some are global organizations like Microsoft, Google. So they have actually become very aggressive in
Yeah.
terms of engineering and how a carbon removal can happen. In terms of they are talking about a long-term agreements. Google is talking about a climate fund, which will actually translate into billions as such. So these are some areas which are getting evolved. That was the first one. Maybe the second area, if you can help me repeat, I will take it forward on the second one.
The second question was specifically talking from the Indian context, right? What are the kind of players? And given that you have already pointed out there are a few, 5 layers of players. So would it be similar in the Indian context as well, or would we need some other kind of aspects?
I think from an Indian market, government has been very aggressive. I would say that in comparison to the extended producer responsibility or the areas on the waste management sector, if you look at hazardous waste or industrial waste, biomedical waste, it has been evolving and going around.
Mm.
But if you look at the carbon credit trading scene, which is coming up as such, has actually replaced the older kind of energy saving schemes which was there
Yeah.
relatively, which is talking about net zero targets, goals, and all. So the compliance market, the penalty, the clauses, which are actually getting evolved on the government as per se. So Indian government, there are the initiations which have come up. So if you look at from the regulatory framework, there is a Bureau of Energy Efficiency (BEE), which
Mm.
actually is talking about targets. There is something called as CERC. This is again overseas trading, which is talking about. Then there is something called as Grid Controller of India. So these organizations are very quickly evolved, and
Mm.
they have started actually taking it to next level. In India, there are very few traders or organizations which are trying to diversify into different areas of biochar or carbon development projects and all.
Right.
But relatively, if you look at from the renewable majors, so renewable areas which is there, so organizations like Adani, which is adding up in terms of wind solars, in terms of hydro projects. If you look at again India as a region, there is tech and biochar which is evolving. So there is
Right.
something called as Indian Biochar Initiative, which is coming up, which is talking about they have relatively signed a major deal from Google, which is talking about around 1 lakh tons of carbon removal by 2030.
Mm.
Plus, organizations like Tata's and JSW have started actually working onto the areas in terms of buyers and shapers, which they are talking about from
Mm.
the compliance market. So, biochar and nature, this is one area which is evolving. But I think 2025, the year gone by, while we are talking now, there are alignments which are coming in. So government regulatory framework, India per se, it is
Mhm.
talking about CBAM alignment. So
Right.
India has come evolved as a EU border, again adjustment mechanism. There are digital registries which are going to come in place on the ICM. There is a price discovery mechanism which is going to come in place for the global institutional investors who are coming in. And I think NetZERO as an organization is going to be part of all this, where they are going to value add. And I will also take this opportunity to thank Carbon Mandal as a group organization and Roshan as a leader in leading this. So these kind of podcasts, these kind of webinars, events actually substantiate, and you're doing a lot of good work to the organization, to the community, to the India as such. And I am sure we will partner a long way to go ahead.
Sure, surely, Vinod. Vinod, it's been almost more than 60 minutes since we started talking. And thank you for all the lovely interaction, the answers that you provided, and patiently answering all my questions. A lot of eye openers, gold nuggets for people to pick in this entire podcast. And I genuinely hope and wish your team the very best, given that you're now building a platform that will solve a real pain point in today's date and time. And I'm pretty sure that you'll be an enabler in making Vikasat Bharat a sustainable Vikasat Bharat, right? So, Vinod, thank you so much. And like you also pointed out, will definitely work alongside. Will be in touch, and if there is anything we as a company can support you or your initiatives, we'd be more than happy to do that. Any last parting words?
No, I think good to go.
Awesome. Thank you, Vinod, for joining in and answering all my questions and adding so much value to our listeners and to our network. For those of you who are interested to reach out to Vinod Raghavan, you could find him on LinkedIn. We'll drop his description in the description, a link to his LinkedIn profile, and also a link to NetZERO and Resustainability community there. And for those of you who are interested to reach out to us at Carbon Mandal and me, you could find us at www.carbonmandal.com. And we are also active on LinkedIn. So happy to interact, happy to chat. But wishing you all a lovely year ahead, 2026. So wishing you all the very best.
Yeah, so one area which, as an individual, I would be keen, and the organization is also keen on working on, is we are ready to support the student community. We are ready to support the employment community who are there. We are ready to support the brands who are there. We are also ready to support the project owners who are there in terms of guiding, advising, and taking it to the next level, partnership to the next level.
Awesome. Awesome.